Hi there, this is Brian King again. I'm an entrepreneur and business relationship coach, and I'm here to help executives and entrepreneurs develop mindful communication skills so that they can more effectively attract, interact with, and impact the people they serve. And that's not only their prospects and customers, that's also the people they work with. So, you ready to get started? Before we do, I want to give a nod to our sponsors who help support me so that I can support you. The first one is Microshare International. These are the people that I use to help me with my marketing, and they're absolutely brilliant. They're cutting edge, they know all the latest strategies, all the latest technologies, so that your brand and your message can show up everywhere on every device. If you want to learn more about them, and I hope you do, you can find them online at microshareintl.com. Our next sponsor is the American Club Association. What the ACA is, it's an association of high-level business professionals that created this organization around their idea of what networking should be. They realize that business leaders need to come together with win-win outcomes in mind so that everyone succeeds. It's not about what's in it for me, it's about what's in it for we. If you want to find out more about the ACA, you can find them online at acanetwork.org. So let's get started. I asked the following question of my Facebook tribe this morning. What do you believe are the qualities required for being a good listener? Now I want you to pause this right now because I want you to answer this question for yourself. The answer to this question affects how you listen to others, as well as what you look for from others in order to feel like you're being listened to. So here's the question again. What do you believe are the qualities required for being a good listener? Pause it and take a minute to answer this. Okay, did you answer the question? Were you surprised at all? Because honestly, I've met so many people who have never taken the time to define for themselves what do they require to feel listened to by others. So when I put that question out to my tribe this morning, needless to say, I got a variety of answers, which really demonstrates the fact that listening is a pretty personal thing as opposed to a universal one. And we're going to get into the various things that can be helpful in helping you become more effective at listening. Well, maybe one thing we should do right off the bat is define what listening is in general, okay? Some people mistake hearing for listening, treating them as though they're synonymous when they're really very different. In fact, there's a linguist named Roland Barthes, Barthes, and this is how he differentiated. He said, hearing is a physiological phenomenon. Listening is a psychological act, which basically means hearing is just acknowledging that sound came in. But when you take the sound that came in and you interpret it and you assign meaning to it, that's listening. Now, when it comes to listening, the meaning we assign is based on our rules, our values, our beliefs, our expectations, our biases, all those filters that we have. So listening isn't the objective activity we'd like to tell ourselves it often is. So acknowledging what it is, seeing it for what it is, can help you avoid any problems that tend to happen in conversation. You with me so far? Okay, great. How do you know then whether you've been effective at listening, especially if you're having to counterbalance a lot of these biases that you have? Well, when the person doing the talking feels that they are understood by you, that you understand their experience and not just their words, that's when you know listening has taken place. So is there one surefire way to listen? No. There are subtle variations. There are a whole collection of skills that you can have. And when I put the question out to my tribe this morning, I got 11 distinct definitions or examples of traits, habits, characteristics of effective listeners that I want to share with you and see which of these resonate with you, okay? Well, these are in no particular order. I'll just go from 1 to 11 and see which ones work for you. The first example I've got, and this one is from me, okay, is to decide how you feel about the person that you're going to be listening to before they even start talking. Because in a typical office environment, there are some people you don't quite mesh with, some people that kind of rub you the wrong way, and when you see them coming, you immediately tense up. You say stuff like, oh, here they come again. I have to hear more about the vacation. Or, oh, here comes the loudmouth. I better get my caffeine. I'm going to be here for a while. When you respond like that and you make that decision, you tense up, you shut down, you start ignoring. Your listening is really going to suck. But if you say, here comes so and so. I wonder what they're going to be talking about today. I can't wait to find out. You decide that you're going to step into it with some degree of curiosity, with some degree of interest. That opens you up, it relaxes you, puts the antennas up, and makes you a lot more receptive from the beginning. And that's a place you want to start from with everybody you work with. Yeah, if you have that long-standing baggage of preparing to ignore them, tune them out, that can be a problem. And that brings us to number 2, which is non-reactivity. It's unlearning those triggers, those buttons that set you up for that automatic response to shut down and close down. And non-reactivity also refers to the emotions that tend to well up when somebody uses a certain word you don't approve of, or brings up a certain topic or a political statement, and all of a sudden you find yourself offended and anxious and mad, and that's something you did. That's part of your beliefs, your values, your expectations that someone else just happened to trigger for you. They reminded you that it's there. They didn't cause it. This is important. They reminded you that it's there with something they said or did. So identifying that reactivity in you, those little buttons available for pushing, and then finding a way to put them aside and realize that I am listening to this person with curiosity, with interest. I'm not looking for opportunities to defend my baggage. You follow me? Great. Let's move on. Number 3 is body listening. How do you use your body to show you're listening? I once worked with a manager and a subordinate who were really clashing and arguing a lot because the manager often felt he was being ignored by this person. So when I asked the manager, well, what would he be doing differently if he was paying attention to you? And the manager said he'd turn around on his chair, he'd look me in the face, and his body would be facing me. Well, when I asked the employee, well, what makes you think you're listening to him? And he said, because I told him. I said, go ahead, I'm listening. And this employee liked to be looking down at paper, shuffling things around, multitasking, feeling productive. So they had very different definitions of how to use their body when they were listening. The employee decided that multitasking was a plus, and he was actually being good to the boss by being able to listen and work at the same time. But the boss wanted something else. Now, who's right? They both are. But the reality is, when it comes to 2 people, you have to define listening in a way that works for that relationship. You follow me? Some people demand eye contact. Some people are uncomfortable giving it. I happen to be one of them. Because of my ADHD, it's very difficult for me to multitask my senses. I need to use one or another, but not both. So what I typically do is I say, go ahead, I'm listening. And then I will assume a thinker pose so that the person knows I'm considering, but I'm also listening. And we'll talk about it in a little bit. The way you give verbal feedback can compensate for the fact that your body language is different than what they might expect. We'll get to that in a second, okay? Number 4 is care. It's important to be interested, invested. Now, I'm well aware of the fact that, and this might be for some of the ladies or even some of the guys, if your spouse is really into a certain reality show or really into sports, they can drone on, and it might as well be a dentist drilling your tooth without Novocaine. I can totally relate to this. But here's where caring really comes into play. You can care about the person without caring about the topic. And there are certain things that people like to talk about. They're excited about it. They want to share it with you. So you can care about them and care about their need to be listened to. So you just remind yourself that you're caring about the person by giving them your time and attention while they talk on and on about their interest. Make sense? Number 5 is teachability. If you are compelled to always feel right, you always want to be the smartest kid in the room, then you're going to ignore a lot of the information that's being said to you because you're just thinking wrong, 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 baloney, nonsense, stupid, wrong. And all you're waiting for is the person to stop talking so you can tell them about how right you are. That's a total waste of everyone's time, and it's very disrespectful to the person you're listening to. The reality is, no matter how much you think you know, there's somebody out there who's lived a life you haven't, who's had experiences you haven't, who maybe sees some idea or experience of yours in just slightly different enough way that it can be of value to you. So listen to the other person, no matter how confident you are in your own beliefs. Think about, maybe there's something here that will help me grow. Maybe there's something in this person's thinking, their point of view, that can help me broaden my perspective and give me an extra tool I didn't have before. So be a student to anybody who talks to you. Number 6 is clarification. Now, this speaks back to the body listening. You want to be able to check in with that person to make sure that you understand their experience. You understand their meaning. You are interpreting it the way they mean. And it's simple check-ins. You can say, you mean to tell me that such and such said this to you and that was really upsetting? You want to use the emotional words they're using. You want to use the adjectives, the descriptive words, so that they know you're paying attention to their language, but you're also tuned into their emotion. And once you've done that, they know, hey, this person's paying attention. They're following along. They're getting me. They're understanding me. I feel valid. I feel connected to. Clarification is a simple process with very powerful ramifications for your listening. Number 7 is focus. Where is your attention? Again, back to the ADHDer, my focus is pretty fragile. So what do I need to do in order to be able to focus? What do you need in order to be able to focus? If someone comes to you in the middle of a crowded office where there are people on the phone, phones ringing, conversations going on, is that really going to help you be an effective listener? Or would it be more helpful to say, hey, you know what? Let's go where it's somewhere more private. Let's go into this empty office. Let's go into this conference room. Let's step into the hall. Any other context you can find that conspires towards your being attentive. Make sense? Number 8 is pause. Now, I can't say enough about the power pause. For those people that have a difficult time shifting, your mind is racing, you are doing 100 things, you don't want to keep thinking about that when it's time to start listening. So if someone comes over to you and says, hey, I've got something to tell you, or I've got a question to ask you, or something I want you to help me process, you can say, okay. Then take a deep breath. Feel the breath. Focus in on the breath. Because your attention went to that, the racing in the head stopped. Now you can say, all right, what can I do for you? At the end of the breath, you ask that question because now you're present and you're ready to receive. Make sense? There's another place it's important to pause before you answer. One of the habits I used to get into, which really caused a lot of problems, because I'm always afraid of being scattered and having my attention go to where the next shiny object is, that people would talk to me and I'd remember something or I'd think of something that I really wanted to tell them, but I'd repeat it to myself over and over again so I wouldn't forget it. Well, the whole time I'm talking to myself, I'm ignoring them. And I would also miss some of the things that they were saying. So I'd say, I gotta remember they said this. I gotta remember they said this. Same problem. I'm ignoring them and talking to myself. So this is what I discovered. I'd let them talk for a couple minutes, maybe 2, maybe 5 minutes. depending on how much my brain could remember. Then when they were done, I'd say, give me a minute. Then I'd sit there and think to try and remember everything I could about what they said. Then I'd think about my response, then I'd give it. Because a lot of listening, believe it or not, or hearing rather, hearing is a very subconscious thing. There's a part of your brain that's hearing and processing that isn't necessarily conscious. So when you pause and you say, give me a minute, then you go inside, you give the subconscious stuff an opportunity to come into the conscious. Then you can think about it, then you can formulate your response. So don't think that time is so short, that if you don't get it out now, you never will. There's time. And the pause gives you that time. You got me? Number 9 is to get permission. If you watch any of these Sunday morning news shows, one thing you see is a lot of bickering, a lot of talking over each other, a lot of jockeying back and forth for the facts. Nobody's listening. Everybody's lecturing, everybody's monologuing. But when you're wanting to connect with someone else and you need to interrupt their train of thought or you need to take it in a different direction, simply get permission. So if someone's talking about something, you can say, excuse me a moment, can I ask you a question about that? They say, sure, go right ahead. Then you proceed. Or you say, excuse me, I have another perspective. Can I share it with you? Those simple permissions are so respectful. It shows that you're listening, that you are considerate, that you care about them simply by asking for permission. And sometimes something they said reminded you of something completely unrelated. So you say, excuse me, do you mind if I tangent here for a second? It'll just take a minute. Sure. Tell them what you wanted to say, then bring it back on topic. Make sense? Number 10, apologize. Sometimes we do our darndest to understand what they're saying, to be as focused as we want to be, but for sometimes things we can't control, we space out. Or we misunderstand something. We forget to clarify, and instead we assume and cause some hurt feelings. So take the high road and apologize. Apologize again shows consideration. It shows that you value the other person's experience and what they're sharing with you, and you want them to feel supported, not hear a whole bunch of excuses from you as to why their feelings don't matter and you have every right to defend your bad habits. With me? Last one, ask questions. One of the most important things in showing somebody that you're interested is you ask them to tell you more. So you say, oh, that's fascinating. How long have you been doing that? When did you start doing that? How would I get into that if I wanted to? Where can I find out more? Any questions that demonstrate that you're listening, you're there, you're present, you care, you want to hear the story of their enthusiasm, you want to hear the story of how important it is to their experience. So these are 11 suggestions. I'm sure there are many, many more. This was by no means exhausted. It wasn't scientific, but it was real. Because I asked it of people that I'm connected to. I wanted to know, what did listening mean to them? If they were looking for an effective listener in their life, what would they need to see happening? So the best thing you can do with these 11 steps is, or these 11 traits is, observe. Take some time to be a bit of an archaeologist or a cultural anthropologist. Watch how other people talk. Watch and see how they listen. Are they focused? Are they clarifying? Are they getting permission? Are they asking questions? And all the rest of these. And most importantly, try them out. You may find there are some people that you have historically had some difficulty communicating with that always seem to believe that you're not listening. People that you don't believe are listening to you. Add some of these qualities in your conversation and see if it improves. And do me a favor and let me know. Do a little research and get back to me. Let me know what's been helpful the most for you. And I hope this episode has been helpful. This is just episode 2 of the new podcast series that I'm calling Conversation Transformation, meaning I really want to help you transform the quality of the conversations you have so they're more connected. so that you have more influence, you have greater impact. And hopefully I'm doing that for you. And if I am, please feel free to share this with all of your colleagues because we don't want to just keep it to ourselves. If everybody gets educated, people will start having better conversations. So join me next time when I'll be sharing more lessons with you. Don't forget to visit my website, which is the home base for these podcasts. That's brianrking.intl.com, and send me an email at brianrking@me.com if you have any questions or any comments. And those questions very well could work themselves into being the topic of a podcast. But in the meantime, thank you for being here. I'll see you in our next episode. This is Brian King saying, thanks for being you.